Okay, so we have Nginx Proxy Manager up and running. Okay, so let's add another proxy host, and we'll call this NextCloud. We're going to go to 127.0.0.1 and port 12,000. We do need WebSocket support, and then we're going to choose our wildcard SSL certificate. Hit save. And then let's see if we can hop over here. So now we do have our domain. Collabora should be up and running. Let's hop back over to NextCloud, go to Office, and then this is going to be HTTPS, hit save, and then we can see Collabora Online is reachable. So that's good. Here's that URL that we set up. So I can see where that cursor is, and then I can see my mobile cursor so I can work in real time. So let me see if I can edit something here. So hello, and you can see it's typing in real time. So test, I can see that in real time right there. So that's pretty dang cool. Okay, and then let's open up the file. And now we're using OnlyOffice. So this looks a lot like a regular Word editor, which is pretty cool. So hello world, go to dark. So now a little nicer on the eyes, and then you can also do dark document. Okay, there we go. I got a new message here. Hello. I'll just say hello, Thomas. You see hello, Thomas right there. So let's try creating a call. So it does work really good. You can see that, I've got my camera real time. Don't have a whole lot of light on here, but it's working on both devices. Now, the OnlyOffice, if you go download the OnlyOffice desktop editors for Windows, so I'm going to say hello from desktop. Now I'm going to save that, and then onlyoffice.docx, and you can see that we have that hello from desktop. Hey guys, this video is going to be a comprehensive tutorial on setting up NextCloud, meaning I'm going to show you how to set it up with Docker Compose. We're going to try out the all-in-one container. We're going to set up a reverse proxy in Nginx Proxy Manager. I'll probably also show you how to set up just regular Nginx as well. I'm going to show you how to set up Collabora as well as OnlyOffice so that you have an online editing platform for Word documents and Excel files, PowerPoints. I'm going to show you how to install the mobile application, and we can have collaboration between the desktop client and our mobile app. And then I'll also show you how to install the desktop client on Windows so that we can sync our files just like you would with Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive. We'll try out NextCloud Talk, so have a little video conferencing, show you just how it works as an alternative to Microsoft Teams, essentially. And I'm going to talk a lot about accessibility to your NextCloud, meaning if you want to just deploy it only on-prem and your other clients can connect to it through a VPN like WireGuard, or we can connect to it through a mesh VPN like Tailscale, which is how I'm going to set it up for this tutorial because I like it for personal use. It's still private on my network. It's not publicly accessible, but yet with Tailscale, if I have the app installed, I can still access my NextCloud anywhere and whoever else I have on my NextCloud. So I think it's also a really good strategy for small businesses as well. And I'll also talk about some of the considerations for making your NextCloud publicly available, either through a Cloudflare tunnel or through port forwarding. The only thing I'm not really going to be going into in this tutorial is setting up email for NextCloud. So I think I'll save that for another tutorial, which obviously you need if you're going to be replacing Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. So a little bit more setup to get, like an email relay server going. And I just want to focus on the actual setup process for NextCloud in this video. So let's talk a little bit about accessibility before we start installing stuff. So I want to talk real quick about how we are going to access our NextCloud, because it just kind of depends on the purpose and who you need to share files with, the sensitivity of your files and security overall. So the first option is just a local deployment. Now, this is probably how a lot of enterprises would be deploying their file collaboration, because you really just care about it being accessible for your employees And if your employees work remotely, they can just connect to the network with VPN. So in this case for us, that would be like WireGuard. The way that I typically do it, because I do host some applications only on-prem, is I would have a subdomain like local that I would use with my domain. So if you only have like one domain, you can have a subdomain that resolves to only local IPs. You can have a tail subdomain that resolves to your Tailscale IPs. And then you can have just your regular domain, which is publicly accessible and resolves to your IP address of your router or your Cloudflare tunnel. So what this looks like is we have our network, this big blue box, and then we have the server, our small box here. I have NextCloud, and then I have our reverse proxy, which is going to be Nginx or Nginx Proxy Manager. So any device that's on the network is going to use our domain, nextcloud.local.domain.com, and that's going to resolve to our server's IP address on the local network. So even though I'm going to have a public DNS record, and that just facilitates getting our SSL certs really easily with Let's Encrypt, that's still just going to resolve to a local IP of our server, and then any external clients will need to connect to a VPN to be able to access our NextCloud. So just a very secure, internal only way of hosting our NextCloud. Next, we have Tailscale. So Tailscale is a mesh VPN. It makes it independent of our local network. So any device anywhere can install the Tailscale app and then be added to our mesh VPN network. So if I get off the Wi-Fi, as long as I'm always connected to my Tailnet with my Tailscale application, I can access my NextCloud. So in this case, I would use a nextcloud.tail.domain.com. And this is what I'm going to be using for this tutorial, but you can still pretty easily extrapolate how to do any of these strategies with this tutorial. So that basically looks like this. Every client, whether it's internal or external, needs to have the Tailscale app installed so that it is on the Tailscale network. So we no longer really care about this big blue box, which is our internal network. We really care about this pink circle, which is now our Tailscale network. And then we'll set up the DNS record for nextcloud.tail.domain.com, and that's going to resolve to the Tailscale node IP address of our server. And then everything is still going to get routed through our reverse proxy and to our NextCloud instance. So now we have our public accessibility options. Of course, you can do port forwarding, which I'll talk about in a second, but obviously I want to mention Cloudflare Tunnel because it allows you to make services like our NextCloud accessible publicly without opening or forwarding any ports to our network. So very convenient. We can obviously do a domain like nextcloud.domain.com, and that's going to be publicly accessible. So that's going to look like this essentially, where all of our clients are going to connect to our domain, which we have a public DNS record for, and Cloudflare Tunnel is basically going to handle that connection to our server. And then we're still going to go through our reverse proxy so that we can still kind of monitor all of our connections at the local level. One of the nice things about Cloudflare in general, or Cloudflare Tunnel, is that it's going to use Cloudflare Proxy by definition. And Cloudflare Proxy is an optional tool, even if you aren't using Cloudflare Tunnel. And it does give you the ability to add a zero trust layer so that you basically have a reverse proxy that's before your clients even hit your network. And you can add a zero trust option where you can configure Cloudflare to only allow clients with certain email addresses. So like it could be your company's email. And that is a very secure way of being able to publicly access your NextCloud from anywhere while still having the flexibility of letting, an external user, like a customer, be able to get into your NextCloud, whether it's to share files or whatnot. Now, lastly, you don't have to use Cloudflare at all. Of course, you can just have direct access via DNS and port forwarding. Now, I'm not going to do this in this tutorial, but it's pretty much the exact same setup. You're just going to be using port forwarding, and you should probably also set up a DDNS for dynamic DNS so that you don't have to worry too much about your IP address of your router changing over time. The only thing I would just recommend is that you should have kind of a higher degree of cybersecurity employed on your server and your network, like an IP blocking tool such as CrowdSec or Fail2Ban, and a good kind of log monitoring tool like Loki and Grafana, so that you just have a good view of who is connecting and also the statuses. So if you're seeing a lot of unauthorized attempts or forbidden attempts, that kind of thing, you can kind of more easily deal with it if you've got the monitoring. So I'll just show you that diagram real quick, where now we have all of our clients actually going through our router, and then the router port forwards to our server. The reverse proxy is going to handle that request. And then now we can add in some additional authentication with Authentic and have a little bit more security with CrowdSec. So those are really our accessibility options. Again, I'm going to be going with the Tailscale route. If you want to do just an on-prem, it's going to be pretty much the exact same. We're going to be using the principles from my local HTTPS tutorial. So if you're a little confused at all about how we're using public DNS records to route to local IP addresses, go ahead and watch that video and come back here. I'm first going to install NextCloud with Docker Compose and get that all set up. And then I'll show you how to do it with the all-in-one container too. I kind of prefer the Docker Compose route, but if you're not really familiar with Compose, then the all-in-one is a nice way to get set up. It's kind of like its own portainer, which is, like a Docker container management tool. So you just kind of have an interface that shows you all of the various containers that you have. It's a little bit less flexible than Docker Compose. I do like Docker Compose because I can easily set bind mounts for the actual storage, whereas the NextCloud all-in-one, at least when you're installing just on Linux, you're kind of restricted to using a Docker volume. So we will be installing Collabora and OnlyOffice. Gonna kind of show you how both of them work. Collabora kind of better supports the open office file types like the ODT, whereas OnlyOffice doesn't really give you the whole tool ribbon, which just kind of show you that if you're only working with like the Microsoft Office file types, OnlyOffice is really good for that, and the desktop applications are great and they are free. The limitation for OnlyOffice is that you cannot edit documents through the NextCloud Mobile App. It requires a paid license, whereas with Collabora, you don't have that restriction. So you can use Collabora online and be able to have the mobile editing work. And then for the desktop suite, you could use OnlyOffice Desktop Suite. So I think that's kind of my preferred route. So without further ado, let's actually create a server and install NextCloud. So I'm going to be whipping up a Ubuntu instance just inside of WSL on my Windows computer because it's just kind of a really easy way of whipping up a server. So first, let me just take a look at my WSL instances. So I don't have an Ubuntu instance here, so I'm going to create one. We're going to do WSL install d Ubuntu, just like that. Okay, let's create a username. I'll do Thomas, and then password, I'll do Thomas Wild Tech. Do that for everything today. Okay, and then instead of fully interacting with the server through the terminal, I actually want to use VS Code so that I can show you a terminal and the file system. So to do that, I need to first install OpenSSH. So let's do that real quick. Just go ahead and update my apt repositories. Okay, we're going to do a sudo apt install OpenSSH server. And then just for simplicity, I'm going to enable password authentication. So we're going to do a sudo nano config, sudo nano of the SSH config file. Come down here to password authentication, and I'm just going to basically write that out. And then let's start the service. So let's open up VS Code. Let's actually see what the IP address is real quick. So this is the IP address that we're going to connect to. So let's copy that. Okay, so I have VS Code open. Let's go ahead and try to connect to our server here. So I got the plus here, and then we're going to say SSH Thomas at that IP address, and then we can add it to our SSH config, and then I'm going to say continue. So enter the password, Thomas Wild Tech. Okay, downloading VS Code server, and then let's open up a folder. So I'm going to open up the Thomas folder. That is fine. And then enter in the password again. Okay, cool. So now I have a file explorer and I have a terminal and an editor all on one page. So let's go ahead and create a folder called Docker within my user directory. This is where we're going to have all of our Docker Compose files in here. And then I actually want to open up the editor in that Docker folder. So let's go cd docker and then code dot to open up the Docker folder. Okay, so we have our base location here. Let's go ahead and create a folder for NextCloud. This is where we're going to house our Compose file. And then let's create a folder for npm for Nginx Proxy Manager. I'll also create a folder for just regular Nginx in case we want to jump back and forth. Okay, let's also create one more folder for NextCloud all-in-one, and we can just store our Docker command file in there. Now let's go ahead and install a reverse proxy. So let's create a Docker Compose file inside of npm. And then I am going to just use a Compose file that I have on my blog here. It has Go access also there in case you want to use that. But otherwise, I'm just going to grab the Nginx Proxy Manager, have a whole kind of demonstration of Go access on that local HTTPS tutorial. So let's copy this, head back over here and paste that. So we are running, I like running my proxy in host mode. So I don't really need the port mapping, but just to know that you've got port 80443 exposed and then also 81 for the web interface. So let's go ahead and get this up and then let's just see if we can get a proxy host going for the admin panel before we even get started with NextCloud. So let's cd into npm and do a Docker Compose up D. Oh, and we need to install Docker, of course. So let's do that. Just search Docker engine. This will have installation instructions for every platform. Go to install and then choose your operating system. I'm going to go Ubuntu, and then we are just going to run these two commands to set up the apt repository and install the packages. So copy that, and we're going to paste that into our terminal password. Okay, and then copy the command to actually install Docker and Docker Compose. Okay, with Docker installed now, we should be able to do a sudo Docker Compose up D. Okay, that should be up and running. So let's go ahead and try connecting to it. Okay, we're going to go to the IP address of our server. So that is 172.30.46.113, and then port 81. So we see that we have Nginx Proxy Manager running. This is the admin @example.com and change me, which I defined in the Docker Compose file. Let's go ahead and edit our administrator user. So full name, nickname, go with Thomas at ThomasWildTech and hit save. Okay, so we have Nginx Proxy Manager up and running. Let's create a domain to actually access our Nginx Proxy Manager pane here. And I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how to do this through a domain that resolves to the Tailscale IP address of your server. So we have our local IP address. Now we're going to install Tailscale on our server, and that's going to give us an IP address for our mesh VPN network. Head over to Tailscale, sign in. We're going to add a device. It's going to be a Linux server. Scroll down, and you really just are going to generate an install script. I would move this up to 90 days for the expiration so that you're not having to change it all the time. But for me, for this demo, I'm just going to actually set it to 1 because it doesn't really just need it for today. So, okay, and then we're just going to copy this install script to get Tailscale installed on our server. So let's do that. Okay, and then let's take Tailscale up. So I can see that I'm now connected on my WildDel1, which is my WSL instance, and I have an IP address for that. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this Tailscale IP address, and I'm going to jump into my DNS provider, and I'm going to jump into my DNS provider, and I'm going to create a record here. I'm going to create an A record, and I want this to just be a wildcard for all the services that I host on my tail subdomain. That tail subdomain is going to resolve to my Tailscale IP address. Now again, if you're just hosting something on-prem, you would use your local domain or subdomain, and then you would use the local IP address of your server. So I'm going to have this accessible over my Tailnet. Go ahead and hit save. And let's hop back over to Nginx Proxy Manager. Before we set up a proxy host, I do want to just go ahead and create an SSL certificate that is going to be a wildcard certificate. So for that same subdomain, we're going to have wildcard tail.wildebeestmedia.com. Okay. And then we're going to make sure to hit use a DNS challenge. DNS provider, in this case, it is Cloudflare, and we do need to go get an API token. Now you're going to hop into Cloudflare or whoever your DNS provider is, go to the API tokens section, and then we're going to hit create a token. So the nice thing about this is that it can be pretty restrictive. So we can just use it for editing a zone DNS, and we're going to specify a zone, and that is this particular domain. So Wildebeest Media. And that's all we have to do. Continue to summary and hit create token. So this is the token. I'm going to copy this. Let's go ahead and just paste that into a notepad here. Head back to Nginx Proxy Manager, and we are going to paste that in there and then hit I agree, hit save. Okay, let's go ahead and just create our first proxy host for this Nginx Proxy Manager dashboard. So let's call it npm.tail.wildebeestmedia.com, and then we're just going to go straight to our local host, or 127.0.0.1, and port 81. We can do the block common exploits. Don't know how good that really is or not, but we're going to go to the SSL tab and get that wildcard cert that we created. Okay, force SSL, that's just a redirection, and then we can enable the HSTS and HTTP2 and hit save. Okay, so should be up online. Let's go ahead and test it out. So I click on that, and then here we go, npm.tail.wildebeestmedia.com. We're to our website. This is only accessible because I am connected to Tailscale. So even if I'm on my phone, on the mobile network, not on my Wi-Fi, I can still go to this website. No one else can unless you're on my Tailscale network. Okay, now let's actually get NextCloud installed. So I'm going to create a Docker Compose file here. And then we are going to be going off of the official Docker Compose file from NextCloud's GitHub repository. And instead of actually using this, I've duplicated it and made a couple changes, mainly with just environmental variables, and then changing the volumes to be bind mounts. So I'm going to hop over to my page, and this, I will have a link in the description to this site, but you can see that I have environmental variables for the persisted database, root password, password user, and also where all the NextCloud data is being stored. So let's go ahead and give this a copy and paste that here. And then we're also going to go and create that .env file, and that's going to be this guy. So do that. I will note that I added the trusted domains down here, and that was not part of the base version. There you have it. Okay, so what I needed to do apparently is indeed include this overwrite CLI URL. And then I also added the overwrite protocol HTTPS. I also added the trusted domains here with my domain name. That's all I ended up needing to do. So kind of unfortunate. Now you see I have my container names named as NextCloud Compose and NextCloud Compose Database, just to differentiate it from the all-in-one container that we will set up. Let's go ahead and create the bind mounts. So this is where you would probably put this on your mounted NAS or your big hard drive. For the demo purpose, I'm just going to do it in a subfolder of my NextCloud folder on my OS drive. So just going to do, I'll just say library. And then here, I'll just call this DB. Database root password should be something very strong. I'm just going to use something not strong. Database user, we'll just call it NextCloud. And then you should have a different password for the user password. So, but I'm just going to do Thomas Wild Tech also. So set that up, and then let's go ahead and run NextCloud. So let me cd over to the NextCloud folder, and then we're going to do a sudo docker compose up d, and it's going to go ahead and pull the app container, the database container, and the Redis container. Okay, so NextCloud should be up and running now. We can see if we can just access directly with the IP address, because I don't have like a local binding. I just have it exposed on port 12,000 here. So if we go back to our Nginx proxy manager and then just change that to 12,000, we have NextCloud up and running. But let's see if we can change this to HTTPS with our Nginx proxy manager here. Okay, so let's add another proxy host, and we'll call this nextcloud.tail.wildebeestmedia.com. We're going to go to 127.0.0.1 and port 12,000. We do need WebSocket support, and then we're going to choose our wildcard SSL certificate. Hit save, and then let's see if we can hop over here. So now we do have our domain, and we are accessing NextCloud. One more thing I want to note is the environmental variables in the Docker Compose file. They are only going to be used the first time that you run the container. All these environmental variables will then get hard-coded into the config.php file. So that's in your persisted data directory, and then that's going to be in config, and then the config.php. Now that is owned by the www-data user. So I can use sudo to open it real quick, but I just want you to know that taking the container down and then setting up a new environmental variable is not going to take an effect after that config.php is already created. So let's just take a quick look at that, and then let's do a sudo nano library config.php. Okay, so you can see that overwrite protocol that we put in there and the overwrite.cli.url. Apparently we really needed to have in there for Collabora to work. We also have that trusted domains in there as well. So if you need to modify anything like you would in the environmental variables, you would just need to go into the config.php and actually just edit this file directly and then take it back up. So just wanted to make that note. So let's create an admin account here, Thomas Wild Tech, and hit install. So this is kind of nice. I can go ahead and just hit install recommended apps, or I could skip. I'll go ahead and install it, and then I'll just show you the App Store and how it says that they are installed. Okay, so those apps are installed. I'm basically in. Let's take a look. I can head over to files, and I've got some like default files that are created here. Now that we have NextCloud installed, well, let's just first see what happens if I try to open up a docx or a .odt file. So if I go welcome to NextCloud Hub, it's going to say NextCloud Office is not configured. So normally it would have just downloaded it if I didn't have Office installed, but since I checked it and installed it, it's going to try to open this up in NextCloud Office, which is basically another name for Collabora. So let's go over to the administration settings, and down here I have NextCloud Office, and then I need to set up a Collabora server. So we're going to basically append that to our Docker Compose file so that we have our own server. There is a built-in Collabora server, but it's really just for testing purposes, not really for production. And when I've used it, it'll work on one computer, but it won't work on another computer or on my phone. So it's not really even worth using the built-in code server. So let's go ahead and set up our Collabora server. I'm going to head back to my website here and go to the Collabora section. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy this guy. Now, if you're wondering where I got this Collabora Docker Compose file, I actually got it from the OwnCloud OCIS or OwnCloud Infinite Scale documentation. Really good documentation there in terms of setting up Collabora. So we're just going to use that Docker Compose file. Head back over to VS Code, and I'm just going to go ahead and add it to the services of this stack. Go ahead and paste that in there. Now I'm going to not do network mode host. I'm just going to have it go into the same network here, and then I'm going to uncomment the ports here. So I'm going to have this available on port 9980 only on the local host. And then this should just use the same network. Oh, let me actually tab this over. So tab all that over, and now I have Collabora in there. So we do need to provide an actual alias that we're going to use. So let's put that into the .env file. This is going to be our domain name. So let's go alias11, and that's going to equal nextcloud.tail.wildebeestmedia.com. Okay, and I do think I made a mistake here where my alias does need to have https://. The reason why I did like 11 is because you can have multiple aliases for the same server host. So you would separate that out. This is like a regex expression. So then this would then be like your 1, 2. And then if you're going to use this for any other hosts, like say I'm also running OwnCloud Infinite Scale, then you just use a separate alias group for that. So I don't need that. I'm going to just go and delete this, and then obviously delete this as well. We don't need Collabora to generate its own SSL cert. Again, we're putting this behind Nginx or Nginx Proxy Manager. So we're going to set the SSL enable to false, and then we're going to set the termination to true. That just means that SSL is being terminated upstream, which it is by Nginx. And then we can still set SSL verification to true. And that is pretty much it. So let's save that off. And then I'm going to take up this container. So we'll just do a sudo docker compose up D. Oh, and I don't need that extra services because it is part of this Docker Compose file. So let's take that tab back down. And then now this should be just another service in our stack here. So try that one more time. Okay, it's going to pull that Collabora there. While that's pulling, let's go ahead and create a proxy host for Collabora. Okay, so let's go add proxy host. And this is going to be collabora.tail.wildebeestmedia.com. Okay, 127.0.0.1. And that was port 9980. So 9980. We need the WebSocket support. Again, we can choose that. And then we need the wildcard, that wildcard cert, and then we want it to redirect to HTTPS. So we should be good there. Okay, so collabora.tail.wildebeestmedia.com. So Collabora should be up and running. Let's hop back over to NextCloud, go to Office, and then this is going to be https://collabora.tail.wildebeestmedia.com. Hit save. And then we can see Collabora Online is reachable. So that's good. Here's that URL that we set up. Disable certificate verification. I guess I don't think we really need that. Okay, this is kind of the next important thing is configuring it for WAPI requests. That's how you say it. So we kind of have to allow IP addresses to talk to Collabora. If we don't do that, then we're going to get an error. So, okay, so I added a whole bunch of IP addresses in here. So what we really need is to allow our Tailscale IP addresses access, and then the Docker IP addresses. So let's go ahead and add the Tailscale IP addresses. See if we can still get this to work here. Let's add the Docker IP addresses as well. And I'll go ahead and add the local IP addresses too. Save that. Let's see if we can still access our files. Okay, and we can, so that's great. Got our NextCloud Office here. So if we get a unauthorized WAPI host, then go to the logs, the logging, and then you should see where it's being denied from. So then we can add that to our access list. Let's just go ahead and add that right there. Okay, so I got Collabora working here. Finally, let's change this view to dark mode and invert background, but let's go ahead and just create just a regular Nginx just to see if we can get it working fine with Nginx. So I'm going to go to my Nginx Docker CertBot repository here, and I'm just going to go ahead and clone this guy. So it's cd into Nginx, and let's do a git clone. Might need to install git. All right, so we got a subfolder in here. That's fine. No big deal with that. The main thing is that we need the Cloudflare API token. So let me get that again, and I'm gonna paste that in here. And then let's change the example.env to just env or .env. Okay, and then the domains are going to be tail.wildebeestmedia.com during the wildcard domain. And then in our Nginx configuration, we're just going to have our redirect for HTTP to HTTPS. I'm going to do that for all of our tail domains. So that's tail.wildebeestmedia.com. And then I'm going to get rid of, well, I can just change this image one that I have here. So let's do nextcloud.tail.wildebeestmedia.com. And this is going to be for the cert too. We're gonna create that cert first. So this is going to be our NextCloud, and we're just going to copy that guy and do one for Collabora. And this is going to be Collabora. So NextCloud is running on 12,099.80 for Collabora. 12,000. Oh, that's Collabora 99.80. And NextCloud is 12,000. Save that. Let's see if we can move everything into Nginx. Great. And then now just delete that folder. Okay, so we're in Nginx. Let's do a sudo docker compose pull to pull the images. Let's go ahead and create both containers, and then we're going to start the CertBot one first, just so that we go ahead and get the wildcard certificate. So docker start CertBot with sudo. Okay, so that should have pulled docker logs CertBot. Okay, let's see if we can take this up. So let's do a sudo docker compose up d. Okay, let's see if we can still access our NextCloud site here. And we can, so that's good. We're using regular Nginx here. Let's try using just regular, or let's go back to Nginx proxy manager. So I am currently using Nginx. So let's cd out of this and go into Nginx. Let's do a sudo docker compose down for Nginx. So Nginx, I do really just like using regular Nginx. And when it comes to like the proxy hosts, you can just kind of close these blocks up. So now I can just see NextCloud, Collabora, pretty easy to jump in there and see the config. So let's go over to npm. Let's do a sudo docker compose up d. So let's go ahead and refresh this page, make sure I'm still working. We can refresh Nginx proxy manager. Okay, let's see if we can go into the docx file, and we can. So we're working with Nginx proxy manager. We're also working with Nginx. I can jump in between the two. Got Collabora working here. Okay, let's download the NextCloud app on my phone. Go to the Play Store, install. And while that's installing, let's just make sure that I am connected to Tailscale on my phone so that I can reach my URL. Okay, connected on Tailscale. Let's go to NextCloud, go log in. We're gonna do https://nextcloud tail.wildebeestmedia.com, and I misspelled wildebeestmedia.com. Okay, so we're in. Gotta log in here. Log in as myself. Thomas Willie. So grant access to my phone. Okay, head back over to the app. Okay, cool. So let's see if we can open up that same document. Go to the NextCloud Hub, docx, and then I might. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that's working. And check it out. I can see the cursor, so I can see where that cursor is. And then I can see my mobile cursor, so I can work in real time. So let me see if I can edit something here. So hello, and you can see it's typing in real time. So test, I can see that in real time right there. So that's pretty dang cool. Just gonna go and check, get out of there. Okay, so I have the phone set up. Okay, now what if we want to use OnlyOffice to view our documents? Go back to my site. So we just have a simple Docker Compose file for OnlyOffice. So let's go ahead and create that. And let's go ahead and create a folder for OnlyOffice. And then here we're going to create a Docker Compose.yaml and paste that in there. And then we're just going to create a secret for signing the JWT secret here. So let's go and create a .env file, and that secret, I'll just say equals Thomas Wild Tech. And then let's go and take up the OnlyOffice. So let's cd into OnlyOffice and do a sudo docker compose up d. And let's make sure to save that. Try again. Okay, while that's pulling OnlyOffice, we can go and create our proxy host. So let's create a proxy host for OnlyOffice. It's .tail.wildebeestmedia.com, and we're going to go to the local host, and this is on port 9981. Add the WebSocket support, and let's get the wildcard cert. We can enable all of these. So it's still pulling. Let's go ahead and add it to our regular Nginx config too. So we have Collabora, and then we have OnlyOffice. That's just 9981 and OnlyOffice. So do OnlyOffice, save that. We've got that block now. Okay, OnlyOffice should be installed. Let's head back here, and we're gonna go to the apps. We need to install the OnlyOffice app. Go down to Office and Text. And just going to do a control find and go OnlyOffice, download and enable. Okay, so now if we go back to administration settings, we'll see OnlyOffice here. And then we're just going to put in that address. So that was https onlyoffice.tail.wildebeestmedia.com. The secret was Thomas Wilde Tech, and hit save. Okay, so by default, OnlyOffice is going to be configured for docx and PowerPoint files, or just all the Microsoft Office files. So if we come back, close this out, let me just refresh the page. Okay, so if I come in and create a new document, you see I kind of have two different options here. So I think it's the second one. Okay, so now this is just the regular ODT document. So if I do this one, we got docx. So let's type onlyoffice.docx. Okay, and then let's open up the file. And now we're using OnlyOffice. So this looks a lot like a regular Word editor, which is pretty cool. So hello world. Of course, we can go to dark mode. I think it's in the view. So interface theme, go to dark. So now a little nicer on the eyes. And then you can also do dark document, which is very cool. So OnlyOffice, very nice. But if I hop back into my mobile application and try to open OnlyOffice, okay, so it's opening onlyoffice.docx. And then you get the warning here. Using the free community version, you can open documents for viewing only. So you need a commercial license if you want to use the web editor, the mobile web editor. So that's a little lame, but you can still use ODT files. So if I just do a new document here, so we'll say hello ODT, create, and then opening it up on the mobile editor. Let's refresh the page here. So what's cool is that this is still going to open up with Collabora. So I do like that you can kind of use Collabora and OnlyOffice. The only problem is now that OnlyOffice is going to be the default for the docx files. Let's also try out NextCloud Talk. So I'm going to open up the Play Store. Okay, we're going to type in our address, //nextcloud.tailmedia.com. Okay, and let's actually create like a separate person. So I'm going to go to administration settings, or actually accounts, and let's create an account for Jim. So let's go new account. Account name is Jim. Display name is Jim. Password Thomas Wild Tech. And we'll just say Jim at Thomas Wild Tech. Okay, and that should be good. So add new account. Okay, so now on my phone, account name, we're going to sign in as Jim. Go to password Thomas Wild Tech. Log on in, grant access. Okay, so let's just go to the Talk app over here and let's create a new message, create a new conversation. Just call it Jim. Add participants. We'll say Jim, create conversation. So let's just say hello. And then, okay, there we go. I got a new message here. Hello. I'll just say hello, Thomas. You see hello, Thomas right there. So let's try creating a call. We're going to allow using my camera and microphone. So let's start a call. Okay, so unfortunately, my camera is being used for recording of the video. So you kind of get the idea though. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the call. So it does work really good. You can see that, I've got my camera real time. Don't have a whole lot of light on here, but it's working on both devices. But because I am already screen recording, I cannot use the screen recorder on NextCloud. So let's go ahead and leave the call. Let's go ahead and download the NextCloud client. Okay, so let's just Google search NextCloud Windows client and go download and install NextCloud. And then we're just going to choose NextCloud files. Now we could do NextCloud Talk too, so that we have the Talk desktop application. But I already showed you the web application, so it is cool having the Talk application because then you just have your instant messaging right there. Okay, let's run the installer. All right, hit. I'm going to say, don't want to restart right now. Don't really think you need to. Okay, so let me add an account here because it's still using my previous installation. So we're going to log in. https://nextcloud.tail.wildebeestmedia.com. Go next. I'm going to authorize it, sign in, and then grant access to the desktop client. All right, should be able to close that now. All right, great. Use virtual files instead of downloading content immediately. Absolutely. So let's, instead of NextCloud 4, okay, we'll just use the NextCloud 4 folder. That's fine. Go to connect. Okay. So I look at my user folder. You see I have NextCloud, NextCloud 2, NextCloud 3, NextCloud 4, because I've been doing this with different trials here. So let's hop in here and you can see those same documents. So this kind of syncs just like you would expect it to. So I can open up my ODT file here with either LibreOffice or OnlyOffice. So right now it just defaults to LibreOffice, which you can download from the web, free application, and didn't really write anything in here. But LibreOffice, not quite as sexy of a user interface, but it probably gets the job done. I've never written like a paper with LibreOffice. So now the OnlyOffice, if you go download the OnlyOffice desktop editors for Windows, I think this is probably going to be default here. So open with OnlyOffice. Let's check this out. Okay, hello world. So this is very pretty. Okay, this looks a lot like Microsoft Word. So I'm going to say hello from desktop. Now I'm going to save that. So onlyoffice.docx. And let's jump back over to files and go to documents and then onlyoffice.docx. Nginx. And you can see that we have that hello from desktop. When you do OnlyOffice, it's kind of nice to have it open in a new tab because it doesn't have the close button. So I'll show that real quick. Go to OnlyOffice and then just uncheck open file in the same tab. So I like that more. You can then just go to your file. And then that opens up in a new tab. So that's pretty nice. I like that. Okay, so let's do the all-in-one real quick. Okay, the all-in-one, have a link in the description to my blog post here, but we can also go find that command on the GitHub website. And we need to follow the reverse proxy documentation since we're running this behind Nginx or Nginx Proxy Manager. And this is basically the command that we are going to run to get it going. Now, I did make a couple changes. I'm changing that port to 8089. And then I'm also setting the skip domain validation to true because it just doesn't seem to work if you're using a local domain like I am. So let's go ahead and give this a copy. Let's just create a aoi.sh file. And then I think this is fine. So the main thing is that for the all-in-one app, it's going to run on 8089 and the actual NextCloud web interface is running on 11,000. So let's go ahead and create that in our Nginx Proxy Manager. So let's go. I'll say all-in-one.tail.wildebeestmedia.com and 127.0.0.1. And that was 8089. Let's actually call this, I'll say all-in-one admin.tail.wildebeestmedia.com because that's really just the admin interface. Go ahead and just add WebSocket support and our SSL certificate. Save that, all-in-one admin, and let's create another one, and we'll call this all-in-one tail.wildebeestmedia.com, localhost, and this is 11,000. We need WebSocket support, same wildcard, and hit save. Okay, so now we can run this to get the NextCloud all-in-one going. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's get rid of these comments here. All right, make sure I don't have any empty spaces. I might just remove those comments from my website. Here we go. Now we're pulling the all-in-one container, and now I should be able to access it from the admin. So let's try that. Oh, and then the all-in-one admin already has HTTPS. So I do need to change that. We need to make sure that our Nginx is using the HTTPS scheme. So let's do that. And then let's try getting there again. Okay, so all-in-one is going to give us this passphrase that we need to get into the all-in-one admin page. So let's take note of that. And then let's open up the NextCloud all-in-one. So paste in that passphrase. Okay, and then the domain that we are going to use is the all-in-one AIO.tail. So aio.tail.wildebeestmedia.com and just hit submit domain. And I guess we might as well do NextCloud Hub 10. Okay, and then we can go ahead and install Collabora, full text search, Cloud Talk. So these are running different containers. So let's just go ahead and hit download and start containers. And while that's doing that, let's go ahead and add our new proxy host to our regular Nginx, because I just want to make sure everything works in regular Nginx too. So I'm going to go to Nginx, and then basically let's just copy NextCloud. And then here, I'll do it below Collabora. So all-in-one admin. So this is all-in-one admin, and that is HTTPS 8089. And then we're going to do just the regular all-in-one, which goes to 11,000 and no HTTPS. And that's just AIO. Okay, we're still installing the containers here. This seems to take a little longer than just the regular Docker compose method. Okay, here we go. So we're starting up some of the containers here. Okay, everything is now running. So let's hit open up your NextCloud. And then we have, I think this tells me what my initial password is. So initial username, admin, and then password is right there. So admin, password. Okay, and then in terms of Collabora, it should just work out of the box. So let's go to the administration settings, go down to Office, and then just by default, it's using the same server name. So all-in-one is kind of handling the proxy over to the Apache server probably with a path to the actual Collabora container. So let's go ahead and see. It already set up the WAPI host for me. So let me see if I can actually access a Word document. So let's go to Documents and let's try opening up this guy. And just, right off the bat, we are able to start using Collabora. So that's nice. So if you do want to use, you can use the same OnlyOffice server that we already set up. That's no problem. You just navigate to that. The first thing that you would want to do is just actually create an account for yourself with admin privilege. So we'll just go ahead and do that. Thomas, and then we would do, Thomas Wild Tech, add an email. So we do that and then add it to the admin accounts. And then you just go in here and actually delete the account for admin. I might need to log out and log back in, but you kind of get the point. Okay, so let's stop Nginx Proxy Manager and just make sure it works with Nginx. CD into npm. Let's go Docker compose down and then do a CD into Nginx. Docker compose up D. And let's just see if our all-in-one still works. And it does work. Let's see if our admin still works. It still works. Let's see if our other NextCloud, our Docker Compose works. And it does. Let's make sure we can still access. Well, we know that the docx is for sure going to work. Let's try the ODT file. Collabora is working. So everything works in Nginx as well as Nginx Proxy Manager. Main difference basically is just that we have our proxy host down here, and they all listen on 443. We have the redirect up here for anything that has the tail subdomain. Well, I hope that you were able to get NextCloud set up the way that you wanted to, whether it's Compose or the all-in-one container. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. We got Collabora set up, we got OnlyOffice set up, and the desktop and mobile client set up. So that was really my main goal. And if you learned something, please hit the like button and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one. All right. Thank you.